In a world overflowing with distractions, we seek meaning. How do we transform ambition into something deeper, into true fulfillment? I'm Sam Pepin, CEO of Course Educa, and I've spent years helping businesses succeed by connecting their goals to something bigger. On the Meaningful Podcast, we explore not just how to win in business, but how to grow as individuals. Through conversation with thought leaders, innovators, and everyday heroes, we uncover the stories that drive us towards something greater. Whether you're striving for success, seeking purpose, or just looking for the next steps in your journey, this podcast is your guide to navigating the intersection of ambition, growth, and meaning. So please join me and our incredible guests as we redefine what's possible in both business and life. Enjoy. Sales isn't about pushing people to buy. It's about giving them the clarity to choose. Welcome to the Meaningful Podcasts. I'm your host, Sam Pepin. Today, we're diving into rewriting the rules of sales, embracing authenticity in business, and transforming the black sheep identity into a powerful advantage. Our guest today is Aleasha Bahr, founder of Black Sheep Sales. With 15 years of experience designing personal sales strategies, Aleasha has helped business owners convert up to 80% of their leads without pressure, pitching, or pretending to be somebody else. Our signature Black Sheep Sales method empowers entrepreneurs to turn their individuality into their greatest sales assets, proving that authenticity closes deals faster than any script ever could. If you enjoyed this discussion, please let everyone know with a like, a small review, or even a quick share. Your support helps more people find meaningful content just like this. Let's begin. Miss Aleasha Bahr, welcome on the Meaningful Podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing so great, Sam. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's spring season, actually, in Montreal. It's starting to be beautiful. The sun is rising, and I am smiling, perhaps, as I like to say. So, anyhow, to kick us off, please tell us more about Black Sheep Sales.
Sure. Black Sheep Sales is a system, an approach based on fitting instead of selling. And it allows done-for-you service providers to convert up to 80% of their sales conversations without pressure, pitching, or pretending to be someone else. Or as my book says, Black Sheep Sales, How to Win More Sales Without Acting Like a Douchebag.
Exactly. Tell me about the genesis of all of that. Obviously, I've known you for a little bit. Always been amazed by your insights and how, again, authentic basically you are. Tell me about when did you first basically sort of fall in love with sales, saw that it was broken? Tell me about the very beginning of Black Sheep.
Ooh, okay. So I started in sales. I've always sold digital marketing. And I was always what you call a natural at sales. So I never had any sales training, but people really like to buy from me. And when you ask somebody who's a natural at sales, well, what do you do? They say, oh, well, I don't really sell. And it's like, well, what the hell does that mean? And it's because they're actively letting someone know when something isn't a fit for them, even if that they could make more money on that thing. So it's like telling someone, oh, you actually don't need the highest tier option. You'll be all set with the middle option. Or you don't need this yet. Go over here and take care of that first and then come back. And it's at its root just caring about the other person's best interest instead of your own. So I always really cared about my clients. And that is a big reason that I was so great at sales. Or that people like to buy from me. So I ended up opening my own marketing agency for about 5 years. And then after that, going back into sales, but showing other people how to sell instead of selling at corporate.
Yes.
And so when I started, I didn't know exactly how I was going to help people with sales, but I knew that people built it up to be bigger than something that it needed to be, that it could just be this natural conversation between two people. It could be like the same conversation as when you recommend a restaurant to somebody, right? What's your budget? What kind of food do you like? What kind of vibe are you going for? And then you make a recommendation, right? So when I first started, I didn't know exactly how I was going to help people, but they would tell me what they did. And I'd be like, oh, okay, so you do this. And they'd say, oh, I really like how you said that. And I'd be like, okay, well, would you like me to write it down for you? And then based on like their audience and what their service was, I was like, are you gathering this information? And they were like, no. I was like, okay, well, let me write those questions down for you too, you know? And then this became my thing, these frameworks. And then
Yes.
over the last 6 years, I have created frameworks for over 100 people and noticed patterns in the frameworks that have created the Black Sheep sales method. So when I first started, I called it the secret art of subtle selling, which nobody really knows what that means, right? So I then shifted to being sales for introverts because introverts a lot of times are trying to act really high energy and smiley and stuff. And they have a lot of natural skills that make them very good at sales when they lean into them instead of trying to pretend that they're somebody else. However, a lot of people don't know that they're an introvert. They think it's about being shy or outgoing, and it's not. It's about your energy and whether you're drained by people or not. So I was missing a lot of people. And so I switched to the matchmaker sales method, which is like closer, but it kind of makes you feel like little old ladies, right? Like it's not really sexy. And so it's really hard in a world of sales experts to express that you're different. Like, I'm not like those guys, right? Like everybody says that. No, I'm not sleazy. It's non-sleazy sales. It's just tired. So I've always been a black sheep in my family. And I was talking to some clients about it. There was an instance where I was being a black sheep in my family. I like didn't want to do the thing that everybody wanted me to do, and I was upsetting them. And I was like, I'm so tired of it being a bad thing. And my client was like, yeah, I'm the black sheep in my family too. And you could tell that they had this like sort of, it was a negative thing for them. And, I talked to the second client telling them about the situation, and they were like, I'm the black sheep in my family too. And the third client who said, yeah, I'm the black sheep in my family too. I was like, hold on a minute. Maybe this is the pattern I've been looking for. And I would love for, and when I look at my clients, they all do something a little differently also. Like in their industry, they approach it in a different way that kind of upsets people. Like the experience of the black sheep is like, sorry that I don't do it like you. I'm so sorry. And I don't know why you're so upset that I'm not doing it like you and getting results. But like, I can tell it upsets you. And so I'm sorry about that. And then eventually you get to the point where you're like, that's a you problem, not a me problem. And I'm going to keep doing my thing anyway. So black sheep sales instantly communicates that I'm different from other like sales experts.
Mm-hmm.
And then it also has this layer in it where I really want to celebrate people who do things differently. And I don't want them to have a sense of shame about it anymore. And it's like everyone's looking for a way to stand out. And black sheep just naturally do when we stop trying to do it like everybody else or follow what everybody else says to do. All of a sudden, we attract like the most amazing people. And it's kind of how genius spreads. Because if you think about any innovation or progress that's ever happened in the world, it was somebody who had an idea that was different. And the mainstream people were like, no, your idea is different and it's scary. And could you please sit down and shut up? And they were like, I'm sorry, I just can't. I am like possessed by this idea and I have to continue with it. Like think about Albert Einstein or Jesus, who was murdered for being a black sheep. And because of this courage, we've all benefited. So there's this other layer of giving black sheep the courage to really stand up in their brilliance, and other people seeing them do that makes them stand up. And then that's how ideas and genius and progress and innovation are spread. So it's multi-layered.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very interesting you mention all of this because I always been sort of a very big proponent of this sort of doctrine that the best salespeople understand it's not really what they sell, it's about the relationship that they build, right? And there's a component within that is so key because one of your quote that I really liked is you said you don't need to be a bad person to be a good salesman, right? Or a salesperson actually.
Yeah.
So there's sort of this stigmatization, specifically I think in some industry like the car industry, for example, where it's very, very salesy, and therefore because they use some of the same same type of keywords, like you said, you get a little bit tiresome, right? Non-salesy, something about even relationship basically selling, which I appreciate. It's sort of basically this down your throat sort of doctrines, cookie cutter. People have a hard time with it sometimes. At least the black sheeps have a hard time with it. I would consider myself a black sheep as well, so just the way it is. But I really want to dive deeper into this fitting solution to client, right? Filling that setting, which I think is really much sort of the core component of your doctrines. Tell me more tangibly, walk us through basically the core principle of obviously the black sheep sales methods, and perhaps how it differs from traditional selling methods.
Yeah, totally. So when in mainstream sales, really like aggressive manipulative behavior is rewarded. In black sheep sales, the three things that you really need are authoritative empathy, curiosity, and passion. You can be incredible at sales. Because if you think about when you buy something, you just want to feel seen and heard. Because if I feel the implication is if you can see and hear me, then you understand me and you understand how to help me instead of just pushing somebody. So there's a lot of different aspects about black sheep sales that differ from mainstream sales. But I would say the main one, which you hinted at here, is the foundational philosophy that if it is a fit, it's a fact and there's no selling involved, right? So this idea, mainstream sales, everybody is a yes. You want to get that yes. And if you did not get that yes, you failed and you are bad at sales. And the truth is not everybody's a fit for an offer. Like making everybody a yes means that there's a ton of people that bought that it wasn't in their best interest.
Correct.
And I specifically focus on service providers who have higher touch, longer term relationships. So I can see where if you get anybody to say yes and then you never talk to them again, that maybe that could work in that scenario. But if you're going to have a long-term relationship with this person and they're like a nightmare client, I mean, have you ever had a nightmare client, Sam?
Yes, it happens. It happens.
It is way worse than having no clients. Like some money is not better than no money. It drains you. It hurts you financially. It hurts you emotionally, energetically. So you really want to be clear about who is a fit for your offer, which some people have gotten into. And it has to be more criteria than a working credit card, which is all mainstream sales needs, a pulse and a working credit card. And you also need to be really clear about who is not a fit, and you need to tell somebody that. So it's a big pattern interrupt. The black sheep does so well in sales because they're so different from what a buyer expects. And for that reason, they trust the person more, they open up more, there's more honesty and transparency, and they also like move forward with you more because of that. And it makes the sales process very easy because you can say, oh, okay, this is your goal. This is the timeline that you want it in. And this is what you expect from me. And that's what I do. So like, let's do this. And it becomes very factual as opposed to convincing and using these psychological tactics and stuff that mainstream sales likes to use.
You touch on a very important word, which I want to dive deeper in, but empathy, right? You talk about a very specific type of empathy, which is basically authoritative empathy, which I want to really dive deeper into, because I really feel sometimes in some salespeople that might hear this think that, oh, perhaps they need to compromise basically the authority of the conference because they are empathic. But actually it goes hand in hand if you really think about it. I recall a great quote by Maya Angelou, and she was saying about basically the fact that nobody will remember what you do, but everybody will remember how you make them feel. And I base my life on that concept. All right. It's very rare that I meet someone because of what they do. It's pretty much always about who they are and who they become through it, perhaps even more importantly. So when you're thinking about these discussions, perhaps of the importance of authoritative empathy, what typically is and how perhaps can professionals cultivate this authoritative empathy without compromising their confidence, or perhaps this sort of misunderstanding of what authority truly is?
What a great question. So, a lot of mainstream sales is based on being the authority, right? Like, I'm in control of the call or whatever. Um, and it's not that by having authoritative empathy, you're not in control of the call. It's that you're allowing the person to feel seen and heard. So, a lot of times, it's interesting because women are really good at the empathy part and not the authority part. And men are really good at the authority part and not naturally very good at the empathy part. And that's where
Mhm.
they both need to work. So, authoritative empathy sounds like, let's say we talk to somebody who's had a horrible experience with a marketing company and they just didn't deliver anything they said they were going to. And it was really hard to get in touch with them. In a normal sales conversation, a lot of times you just go on to the next question. They just bared their soul to you and told you about this horrible experience. And you're like, yeah, so what are you looking into now? Like, you just like go on to the next question, right? Instead of being like, yeah, it's really difficult when you make the leap and you invest in something and you dedicate the time and they just don't deliver on it. And you almost like feel a sense of betrayal or discouragement. And like, can you really trust somebody? And the difference is really understanding what their process and communication looks like ahead of time. So, like, if you hear, I didn't say at any point, that's what we do, but it's implied that that's what we do. So if you just have that part of it, somebody's like, yeah, I've had this horrible experience. These people didn't talk to me and they didn't do anything they said. And you're just like, yeah, a lot of times it's because it's so important to know ahead of time what their process and communication sounds like. How does that feel? How does that feel to you?
If it's I think it depends. I suppose I think it feels more natural. Certainly, feel more authentic. The To me, when I think about selling based on this fitting, not selling, like you said,
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of sales programs are very much about, like you said, convincing. Right? We see that there's not a fit, but because I'm a salesperson, I'll just push because I'm paid on commission or whatever it is, and I just need to. Right? So to me, this sort of being attentive and actually the sort of reverse engineering from actually listening to talking instead of the opposites is so crucial in any conversation, but definitely in a selling conversation.
Yeah, totally. So I mean, like it's this idea of acknowledging what you've been through was hard. And I'm
Yes.
so excited that you found us so we can get to the other side of it. Like, we're not just going to live in this swamp, right? We're going to get out of this swamp that you live in, where mainstream sales is really a lot of times about living in the swamp with them and like digging into the pain and making it worse and making them doubt themselves. And if you doubt yourself, then I can show you that I'm the one who can save you in this situation. And if you don't invest with me to save you, then you're dumb.
Yeah. No, absolutely. There's sort of there's an aggressive component, I suppose, and that's a perfect segue actually to what I wanted to talk to you about, because you talk a lot about this concept of sending on hope and not on pain, right? So in any sales process, to a certain extent, they will be going over to similar past range, basically, as I like to call it. It's very natural to do so, specifically in a service-based business where you're cultivating your relationships. At some point, basically, if it's an established business, the likelihood of somebody basically engaging with a marketing agency, for example, is very high. And therefore, if they are still on the lookout for a marketing agency, we can sort of suppose that they had some past range, and going over them is actually probably a good thing to do. So that way you, like you said, imply that I hear you, I see you, and now you're at the right place, basically, to make sure that we go towards the right path, the sunny path and not the rainy path, I suppose. So when you emphasize the effectiveness, perhaps, of selling through hope, it's I never heard it said this way, but I think it's what I do sort of naturally. I've never been a sort of of a big sort of selling on pain sort of person. I just always felt, like you said, these sorts of, first of all, everybody else does it, so I think it's losing sort of its flavor a little bit. But the other thing as well is, when we study biology and when we study psychology, which is what we do, the negative sentiments always have a stronger bond to reality, because there is basically a negative conclusions that is aka debt or losing all your money, and therefore there's sort of a threshold, a floor as we call it in psychology, that is well defined. Compare that to the upside of a positive, there is really sky's the limit, as they say. So perhaps that's why we typically react a little bit stronger to negative emotions, because we know how big the downside is compared to basically positive emotions, where we know the upside could be limitless. And that is playing with our brains. And that's why most selling programs are based on negative feelings, because it is true that if you're just looking at the numbers, I'm not saying about how they feel, but looking at the numbers, there is a lot of people, especially desperate people, which we can argue you may not want them as a client. That's another conversation. But it is very effective. So I'm really interested in from your perspective, I suppose, what strategy can salespeople use to focus on hope and hopeful outcomes, I suppose, during their sales conversations, and not within this, again, misunderstanding that is at the atrophications of tangible results.
Yeah. And I mean, we have to talk about the challenges. We have to talk about the pain of what happened so that we have context, right? So it's not that you're not discussing that. It's that digging into the pain sounds like, okay, if the person was like, yeah, I, invested all this money and they didn't deliver, how did that make you feel? Well, how do you think it made them feel? Like you're just, it's so see-through, the strategy.
Yes.
So it's like, yes, people react powerfully to negative emotions, but it is so difficult for the average person to pull off that strategy without it feeling like a see-through gimmick. A minority of people can do it, and those are the ones teaching it, and it works well for them.
Yes.
So big part of my philosophy is like, there's no right or wrong strategy. That strategy works for people, but it's the minority of people. And it also works on the minority of buyers, the desperate ones who are easily put in a place of self-doubt. Those are the ones it works on. And those are not the best clients for a long-term, high-touch relationship. So it does not make sense for most people from a multitude of ways that you look at it. So instead, yes, of course, understanding what challenges there were and then laying out like, okay, I can see why this happened for you because you didn't have this, that, and the other in place. So I'm excited for when you have that instead, because it will create this result. And like asking the person, does that feel different than what you've done before? Like, does that feel more effective than what you've done before? And if the answer is yes, then like, let's do this,
Yes. I just went to a business conference in Toronto, and there was a gentleman that quotes Desmond Tutu, and he said that basically hopes is being able to see the light even despite basically of all the darkness, I suppose. And that's where, again, coming back to that sort of, it's not selling on pain, it's more this conscientizations through pains to be able to understand, again, coming back to that very human-centric sort of process, understanding it, seeing it, hearing it. And I'm a big believer that first and foremost, we don't have many people to share some of these pains with. So when you are that person, a lot of people open up to you in a way that a lot of people are always amazed, actually. Well, they told me all of this in the first time I've met them, or it's because you were available basically to hear all of that from them. That's actually, it's a way bigger deal than most, I suppose, understand. We're all going through these moments of, there's sometimes it works very well, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes we fail. Sometimes again, where we sort of are hopeless. And if you can be a figure of hope, I really do think that not only is it fantastic for your selling authority, it's fantastic for your reputation. It's fantastic for who you are, and that always follows you, I suppose. Something you mentioned, Aleasha, was navigating basically objection through prevention over persuasions, right? You sort of really try to shy away from anything that is persuasive, the Dale Carnegie of this world and so on, which to a certain extent I am actually quite a big fan. But I do believe that the way you argue it perhaps is addressing the potential objection early in the conversations, so therefore we can sort of get that out of the way, and therefore move forward with more authenticity and more effective, basically from a selling perspective. I think it was Benjamin Franklin, if I'm not mistaken, that said something along the lines of an ounce of prevention basically is worth a pound of cure, something around those lines. And it's Franklin, right?
Yes, of course.
And so I'm wondering, how can sales professional perhaps identify and address objections before they arise in the sales process, so they seem like they're even more of an authority than they might even be?
Yeah. So this is a big piece of black sheep sales that differs from mainstream sales. So in mainstream sales, the philosophy is just tell them exactly what they want in their own words, right? It's like this interrogation in the beginning of the conversation. The salesperson's instructed not to speak. You ask questions, you do not talk, right? And then you write down all their answers, and then you mirror them back to them in this pitch where it's just you talking. Oh, you wanted purple elephants on a mountain with fruit punch at your party. That's exactly what we did, And then you have this section at the end of the call that's just this objection battle. And the idea is that if you discuss objections before that it puts them in their head, which is funny because no, they're there anyway. And you know what? When anybody leaves a sales conversation, their initial instinct is, what are all the reasons why this is a bad idea, right? And so let's talk about those now, because they're going to come up later. And it's much more difficult to talk about from a defensive standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about like when you have an objection or a concern about something, you bring it up, and then the salesperson's like, well, here's why that's not a concern and you should just buy it anyway. Like, it doesn't feel convincing at all. It feels like even if the salesperson is absolutely valid in why it's not a concern and you should buy it anyway, you still are like, that's what they want to say because they want to get the deal. So, and you feel invalidated. You don't feel seen or heard. So instead, approaching it from this proactive way. So let's say somebody always gets a time objection. This sounds really time consuming. Then we're going to ask in the beginning of the conversation, how much time do you have to invest in this? I'm going to ask it right now. So we can let you know that's more than enough time. Or maybe that's not enough time and this person is not a fit, right? And that's okay. There's no judgment with that. We want to be honest with somebody. Or let's say that price is often an objection, okay? So we're going to talk about what the investment usually looks like and ask them, what is the value of something like this to you? And let's talk about that now. If it creates this result in your life, or like, what have you invested in before? What made you invest in that? Like talking through things like that too. Or let's say that an objection a lot of the time is like, I had a client who showed insurance agents how to generate leads organically with their personal profile and have inbound leads. And they had people all the time objecting to having a personal profile, doing it on their personal profile. So we actually sent that information out. This is another element, pre-call education that proactively overcomes objections. Like ahead of time. Yeah, ahead of time, we send them a call where we're like, hey, you are an insurance agent and you've been told that you should buy leads, and that's what everybody hears. And then you call them and nobody wants to talk to you. And they all, if they do, they're like, I lose my number and never call me again, or they treat you really badly or whatever. And that's it's okay. That's what happens to everybody. And what makes it a lot easier is to have inbound leads. And so we want to let you know, like, you're not going to be posting on your profile saying, who wants an insurance quote? Because that doesn't work. But you are going to be using your personal profile. And if that's a problem for you, like, you should just cancel this call right now, you know? And we're going to show you exactly how to do it and what to say in a way that's authentic to you. And if that sounds like it is a fit, I can't wait to talk to you. And it just, so you're proactively overcoming these objections. So there's just, don't even bring that to the call. Okay. We're just like not even going to talk about it. So all of those things really help. Whereas in the reverse, like overcoming objections at the end, if somebody was like, well, I don't really want to use your personal profile, all of a sudden you've got to go on and on to this person about why they need to use their personal profile, where we can just not have that be part of this conversation at all.
Yeah. It reminds me when you're thinking about content, specifically pre-call. I had the chance to sit down with Marcus Sheridan, which is the author of the Ask You Answer. I don't know if you're familiar with this framework. Very interesting guy, and he talks about exactly what you said, which is typically there's objection that is. There's actually not that many objections if you think about it. There's only about 6 in his words. And when you think about that obviously time objection is it the best in his category, pricing, authority as well, right? So I need to talk to my wife about this, something around those lines. So content basically, and we have these stats now, which is incredible, which is 80% B2B service based. 80% of converted leads actually make the decision before contacting you. So they read about you, they read obviously peer review, they read all sorts of things, and therefore content seems to apply not only a big portion in marketing, but in sales now. I'm really intrigued about if you also think about that and sort of, I suppose, accommodate for such a shifting minds in the customer's perspective, to making sure that we go in marketing and sales and in hand to basically not only facilitate the work of the salespeople through better marketing, through better basically accommodation for these objections. How is that? Does that blend also into black sheeps, or what's your opinion of all these sort of new age understanding of behaviors?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I had my marketing agency, it gave me some really on the ground in the trenches experience, seeing how that shifts a sales conversation. And it is part of the whole process. And
Okay.
it makes me so sad when companies like don't have their marketing and sales interacting with each other, because it's such a missed opportunity. Like, sales are the front lines. They hear what the customers are saying. They hear what the customers are confused about. They hear what they want. They hear what they don't like. And that's all important information to put in the marketing. So pre-call education is something that's a little different because it happens after somebody books a call.
Yes.
So after somebody books a conversation with you, you can send them like, so for example, I was just talking to somebody about doing their interior design. And it's a hard sell because it's like luxury and people don't really understand the impact of it. So putting together some pre-call education ahead of time, because people are like, how am I going to get them to watch it or read it? Well, you have to sell it position it as if it's for the other person. So 3 sneaky ways your environment is hurting you that you don't realize. And then showing in the video, like maybe a really stark environment and saying, how would you work in this environment? You know, would you be able to be productive? Like, how many hours could you spend in this? And then showing an environment that looks like something they create, which their whole thing was plants. It's got lots of plants in it. You know, how could you work in this environment? How would you feel? What would you create? That is the impact of environment, you know? And then you can talk also about like lighting or chairs or whatever, you know? But wrapped, the way that that's positioned is like, and we know how to do that for you. But it's positioned or wrapped in a way that's like, hey, you don't know this and you want to solve this problem. So like, you want to understand what could be going wrong with it now. So there's like, for the insurance agents I mentioned, 3 misconceptions about being an insurance agent. And so you kind of wrap it in like it's for them to avoid pain, basically. And you're also letting them know how you solve that differently.
Yes. Exactly. And I think it not only helps with your positioning, it helps again as an objection handling, it helps with all parts of sales because we live in an economy now that our prospects, our consumers never been this informed and it is not close. You used to live in a world where it was very hard. You needed to be having huge budget to get in front of people. And today it is actually, we might argue, so easy that too many people do it wrong. That's how basically different the marketplace is. And I really love this understanding of not only marketing and sales playing hand in hand so that the leads that are coming through are more informed and therefore better chance to be a fit. That's the first thing. And then using basically pre-qualifying questions and again objections that will arise because like you said, even if they don't mention it, it's still in the back of the mind. They still have it basically within there. And that's where you basically go at the end of the conversations and they say something along the lines of, oh, I just need more time. Let me just check with my partner. And those things are basically because some inner doubts was not basically talked about, was not perhaps resolved. So be proactive. That's the point. Stop being so reactive. Be more proactive. That would be a great sort of one-liner right there. One thing, Aleasha, that I want you to help me further understand is your system seems to be quite structured. There's quite a bit of structure within it. There's a system perhaps that emerged out of it. But one thing you talk quite a bit about as well is the role of improvisation basically in sales, which I think that's a very it's quite a tricky topic actually, because if done well, it's fantastic, and people obviously have a very flamboyant personality, and you're very vibrant basically in who you are, which I think fits you very well. You talked about this. I think you made a post that I saw about how basically you were enlightening how improv classes can enhance basically sales skills and sort of promoting this comprehension of active listening and adaptability as well, which I think is usually underrated as salespeople. And we'll talk about that also as a side point. But I'm really wondering, in what ways, let's say for people in which fits this black sheep mindset, right? Let's keep within that audience of yours. In what ways can improv basically training benefit salespeople in real world scenarios? And how big of a deal do you think it is for them to participate in such a training, I suppose?
Oh my God, that's such a fun question that no one has ever asked me before. So improv is really like a life skill. It's really like how to handle life, like outside of sales as well. But you cannot, even though I have like a proven system and framework, you can't script every single conversation. You just can't do it. Humans are the most unpredictable thing, and there's two of them in a sales conversation, and they are different depending on the day. If they had a bad day, if they had a good day, what interaction they just had, did they eat? There's so many factors affecting how they're hearing and perceiving information. And so you have to be clued into those differences, those nonverbal cues, so that you can address them. Say like, what's coming up for you? It seems like there's some hesitation, like things like that, right? And I do some training, like whenever I work with people on these softer skills, because people will throw you a curveball. And so there is like a structure to the soft skills. Improv is not as structured. Improv is yes and. So it's a great foundation. It's actually really helped me play with my kids too. Because they'll be like, hey mom, do you want this, banana? And I'm like, yes, and I'd like a coffee. You just build on it, right? Like, how ridiculous can we get? And nobody's idea is bad. The only rule is you can't say no in improv. So you just always have to respond to what's coming at you and build on it. And so obviously, like, it's a great foundational skill because people say weird stuff to you, like on the street or whatever, and you need to know how to respond in tense situation or weird situations. And it just makes you a lot better on your toes, so to speak.
Sure.
In the sales context, you kind of want more structure to it. Like, okay, somebody said this weird thing and I want to program myself to get curious instead. Like I had the other day, this guy was like, who do you work better with, men or women? And I'm like, why are you asking that question? Like, have you had some experience with somebody who like wasn't good with men, or like where is this coming from? Because a lot of times you're answering a direct question when there's a question behind the question that
Yes.
really needs to be answered. So there is this adaptability and flexibility in the sales conversation that's necessary, and improv is a great foundation for that, and life. Was that a good explanation?
Yeah, no, I love this. I love it. And again, it's so interesting you mentioned that. I've been finding myself with more people that do improv these days. For that was just sort of a moment of enlightenment for me. And you're right. There's sort of there's an adaptability, like we said, that is very insightful. And there's also this curiosity, which I think, in my opinion, curiosity is the greatest skills you can have. um Basically, everything else consider, I think the most curious people typically tend to be not only the happiest, but the people in which actually accomplish more. That's a rule of mine. And I try to surround myself with only curious people if I can. But the from that perspective, I really believe in, because like you said, and I think it's a sentiment that we feel more and more, but it's about time that we have, again, sort of this open conversations. But customizing sales strategies, the one size doesn't fit all. Perhaps it is time to get above it. It's time to, I suppose, to all the senders and so on in the world, the sales training, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But at the end of the day, and we know this from a psychology level, from a biological level, from just a point blank foot on the ground level, people are very complex, right? Newton, I can, I can calculate, I can calculate the matter of heavenly bodies, but not the madness of people, to cite one of the genius of this world. And therefore, I think we should go with Newton and say, you know what, people not only, like you said, are extremely and intrinsically complicated. They are every single day of a minute different version of that complicated self. So these one size fits all, let's get over it. The whole world is shifting, specifically with technology, to a performance, to a personalization, basically based interactions in every single form of every single side, perhaps, of that factions. So tell me, not only within the black sheep basically model, but how can entrepreneurs develop a sales strategy basically that align with their unique strengths and values, and take a model like yours but build upon without perhaps losing what makes them unique, novel, and perhaps valuable? Tell me more about that harmony, because I'm sure there's sometimes some tensions, but how do you go about making sure that we keep retaining ourselves, but now have a better framework as a vehicle to get to the desirable outcome that we desire?
Yeah. So, I mean, such a big part of what I found is successful in life is being clued in to what works for you. So, is it getting me results? Number one. And am I having a good time? You can get results at something and not be having a good time. That means that is not aligned for you. And there's another way of doing it. But the amount of times that I see people doing something that's not getting them results because someone they trusted, someone who makes more money than them, someone who's smarter than them said to do it is nuts to me. So being able to say, hey, I tried it. Like, I'm glad you're trying new things, and it didn't work. And there's a difference between like acquiring skills and knowledge and getting better at something. You can feel that difference from that and alignment, right? So sales has perpetuated this idea that it's supposed to be uncomfortable. Oh, it's uncomfortable? Yeah, just get ready for that and keep doing it. I would argue if you are uncomfortable, the person across from you is absolutely uncomfortable as well. And you want to do, like, it should never be uncomfortable. There's a difference between acquiring a new skill and feeling uncomfortable. So, like doing something that just feels unaligned. So even anything that I say, it's so important to say, does that resonate with me? Like, does that feel right? Or does that feel so outside of what I would have thought and I would hate to do it? Then don't. It's kind of like lead gen, right? So people will say like, oh yeah, I hate cold DMing. And it's like, okay, then don't. There's so many ways, but everybody says it's the only way. You have to do cold outreach. It's the only way. And you need to do 50 people a day and you need to track your numbers. And it's like, there's so many ways to do the same thing. Do what feels good and what's getting results.
Have you seen the one of my good partner that I absolutely adore, one of my clients as well, is it showed me this what she calls the clarity matrix. I think it is sort of a white label of a metric that already existed, but I want to run it by you because it's so interesting. So on the top left corner of this, it's a grid basically separate in four. And on the top left, basically, are what we call the zone of genius. You're excellent at it and you absolutely adore it. All right. You do as much as possible, your energy should be here. And then you have basically what she calls basically tedious. You like it, which means you're good at it, but you don't like it that much, right? So you can do it, but there's always this feeling of just, oh no, not this again, right? Then there's the shiny object, which is you're not good at it yet, but you somehow has a desire. You really like it. You're very curious towards it. You're sort of attracted by it. And then there's the absolutely catastrophe basically portion, which is you're terrible and you don't like it. All right. And it's basically a sort of a delegation system, but I really want to pass it by you in sales as well, because when you are elaborating sort of these, like you said, this sort of a foolish understanding that because Gary V basically does something, you should do it as well because he's sort of the top leader. That's great. And again, he got to a top leader precision because he's certainly doing some things right. Let's not get over this either. But again, we live in a world where it is wide open. You can have a 7-figure business with a podcast, with an email list, with a newsletter, with mailing. I have a few people nowadays that there's so many people using the mailing route that they do that. And since it's the only thing they receive in the mail, it works super well. It's not a matter of, again, how you get there with moral perhaps implied, obviously. If you get there morally, the vehicle you're using to get there might as well be a vehicle that please you. Might as well be a vehicle that you get up in the morning and you're happy to get in that vehicle to get to that basically 1 year, 5 years, 10 years goals. So I'm wondering, do you, for yourself and for the people you serve, do you have sometimes this sort of I don't know if it's a formula or a matrix, or you see that somebody telling you that, hey, Aleasha, I'm doing this right now at the moment because I just really think that I need to do it, but I don't want to. How perhaps do you take the decisions on the way you consult with your clients to say, well, okay, we're not going in this directions because even if this person told you that this is working, you very visibly don't like it, and we're going to go into this direction instead. Do you have a framework to make these decisions internally?
Yeah. I mean, you're like driving the vehicle, you might as well enjoy it. I would argue that you're going to have more success when you enjoy it, more so than like you might as well. And it comes up a lot when I'm creating frameworks for people or giving a strategy. So the way I work is extremely collaborative because I don't want to tell you to do anything that you don't want to do because then you're not going to do it. So we might as well create something that you want to do. So if I see somebody being like, it's really a nonverbal thing. Like what's up with your face? What is your face telling me? You do not like this? Let's change it. You don't have to do that. Or like, we'll create a framework and then I'll find out that they're just skipping huge parts of it. And I'm like, why are you doing that? Because it feels weird to say it. Then tell me that so we can change it. Like, there's no problem with that. But people have been trained that they need to do things that they don't want to do. Like that's just part of life and part of getting results. And I would argue that actually it's part of what's hurting your results. Like when you do things that you want to do and that also get you results, you're going to get way, way more results.
Yes, 100%, 100%. I want to talk about the importance of boundaries in clients and serving your clients and in clients' relationship. Most importantly, you really sort of a side point to the preventions over persuasion that we had basically in the early these conversations. You really emphasize basically setting clear boundaries of and expectations perhaps to foster healthy and long-term client relationship, because we know one thing in sales, in any business, it's much cheaper to retain a client than to get a new one, first and foremost. And I will argue it is far more enjoyable. I have clients now that are years old, and I adore them. I don't do it for their business anymore. I do it because of the relationship that we have. And I really think there's very few feeling in the world that empowers you more than that one. That's my opinion. Um, Setting boundaries, not only in sales but in life, is very difficult for most people. I
Yeah.
would say that and I'm still a young gentleman, but most of my conversation with my peers, setting boundaries, I would say, is one of their top struggle in all sort of relationship. So I'm really wondering, in your words, how can setting boundaries enhance the client experience, let's come back to the business world, and lead to better outcomes? How to do that, and perhaps how to do it effectively?
Yeah, that's such a good question. A lot of people do feel weird setting boundaries, and that is another reflection of not being a fit. So getting really clear on what is not a fit, another way of saying it is what I'm not going to do. It's what I'm not going to do for you. So if you want that, we are not a fit. And that kind of makes it clear for people sometimes. And the difference in feeling comfortable about it is being proactive about it. So when it's uncomfortable is when somebody asks you to do something and you have to be like, no, I don't do that. So instead, you want to say upfront, like, for example, I'm not going to take sales calls for you, right? That's not part of what I do. I'm not going to generate leads for you. That's not part of what I do. This happens a lot with marketing agencies, this scope creep. So they need to be really clear on what's included and what's not included and when it does not work. So this is not going to work if we don't have a point person internally that can get us assets that we need in time. If you're unable to get us approvals or revisions in 72 hours, we're not going to publish content and you're not going to get results. So if you're really clear about that upfront, then it's a lot easier to hold that boundary because you can say, as we discussed, we can't do this or whatever. But a lot of times, if somebody reaches out and is like pressing a boundary, like, for example, asking a marketing agency to do something that isn't included in their contract, they can say, there's a few different ways you can respond. You can say, this actually isn't included. I'm happy to do it this one time, and moving forward, it's this investment. Or you can say, that's actually going to take a lot of time that's not included. The investment is blah, 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 blah. I'm happy to do it. Just let me know. However, some people will just say yes because they feel so weird about saying no. And then it's a slippery slope. And the client isn't necessarily bad intentioned. They just don't know the boundary. Like, you're saying yes, so they think it's okay. And so they keep asking for stuff. And the person is like, how rude that they're just asking for all of this extra stuff. And it's like, well, you're not saying no. So a lot of people would just keep going, and like that empathy for the other person's position, like clarity is kindness, y'all. Like, let somebody know what is included and what's not included. And most people don't want to be rude.
Yes, absolutely. Talking about setting boundaries, and I suppose as the world is shifting towards more and more technology being used, where we've been seeing this with AI agents, we've been seeing this with a few things where we might go to a point where very recently, actually, that we might have robots taking decision on our behalf, who could call, maybe even being on calls on our behalf. I've seen, I consult for a few companies that are getting there.
Gosh.
Well, yeah, it is quite impressive, and there's some pros, there's some cons, but I suppose when you're seeing this drastic shift towards technocracy, perhaps I think it's the right way to look at it, is sort of this sort of understanding that, again, within this framework of performance, before everything else, a tool can be used and can replace, quote unquote, human beings. With all of those shifts basically impacting your industry, where do you see sort of the near future being, basically, for authenticity, for framework where, again, we are relationship based? Are you a bit conscious about some of the tension we've been seeing towards this sort of human tech the blend of an hybrid sort of narrative. Tell me more about where you see sales evolving in your perspective.
Yeah. So some people do say that AI is going to take sales calls. I would argue it depends on the price point. Sure, for a lower price point option, people are not going to be as thorough in their sales conversations, and they won't mind that they're talking. Maybe they won't notice even that they're talking to AI. I think with how much AI is happening, there's just like this incredibly huge need for something real. People are like, give me real humanity. And they're searching for it more than ever. So like the other day I was doing a podcast and I totally flubbed something. I was like, you know, like that situation.
Okay.
And I was like, should I edit it out? And he was like, AI could never. Keep it in. It makes me sound like a real human. And people are just like wanting that, right? And so, you know, this perfection is not going to be attractive. The imperfections are going to be what makes somebody trust somebody more. And especially with those higher price things, like you're talking about things 30,000, 50,000, 100,000, like all the, like that is a nuanced conversation that requires a relationship with somebody, especially ongoing relationship. Like that, I don't think there's any way that AI could ever replace a high quality salesperson, like ever.
Nice. So you don't see that impacting the market as much as people are saying it as we speak.
Maybe mediocre salespeople or like at a lower price point or
Sure.
something. Sure. But there's no way it could replace every salesperson in every industry, especially because like, I mean, there are industries where cold outreach is needed. Like I had to go to the conference. This guy won't answer my emails or my calls, right? I had to go to the conference where I know he was attending to run into him in the bathroom. Like AI is not going to be able to do that. Like it depends on the industry and their audience and the price point of the service. I don't think there's any way
Okay,
that AI.
understood. The way you were talking, you remind me of Andy Warhol actually. The what you said right there, the people are craving something real and not perfections. I think we've been seeing that shift in art for quite a long time actually,
Yeah.
a few decades, not quite a long time. Obviously, it's perspective based, but but I do again. And that's where I'm a really sort of an internal optimism. Sort of, I always been an optimist and somebody that believe in the world and in humans deeply. I do think that perhaps within this sorts of again technocracy to a certain extent, within this hybrid of men and tech becoming sort of one from a business perspective. I was listening to Seth Godin and he said that in 5 years from now there will be business, basically technology business, or you're not in business anymore. So he was that bullish on it. So we really
Wow.
been, yeah, well, there's a few narrative, exactly. There's a few narratives sort of coming together. That's the case for any innovation, by the way. Trust me, I wasn't there, but when the at the very, very beginning of computers, I was not born yet, but it was the exact same thing with Gates, right? Some people argue, or even Steve Jobs, when he said you had a computer in your back pocket, everybody was saying, well, why? Nobody will watch the screen, a 6-inch screen. Nobody will want that. And then, boom, it's one of the most revolutionary invention of all time. So it is, I believe that we always seen these, again, these narrative colliding and very important people saying one thing, another very important people saying this something else. And therefore, sort of again, a war of idea, which if kept healthy, I think is a great thing for humanity. But I was really wondering about yours, and I'm glad that I got it, and we shall see perhaps if you were right. I think it's gonna happen to us much faster than people think. I think before 2030, you're gonna see corporations with AI on sales calls. That's my guess. We'll see, but I
We'll
agree with
see.
you though.
Also, though, don't you think that people will get better at knowing how to test if someone is AI?
Sure, but let's say for example, banking, where they are terrible at answering if it's a real human beings. would you prefer being half basically served by an AI or not served at all within 3 hours window by a human being? That's where the conversation will lies.
No, of course not. Again, it depends on the industry and the
Yeah.
service and everything. But I think that like in corporations who really need a human in there that try to put an AI, like humans are going to be like, no, I want to make sure I'm talking to a human. And
Okay.
these are the questions that like people just get smarter. It's kind of like how everyone uses ChatGPT, and now we know that if they use the M dash in the content, that person used ChatGPT. Like there's just ways of, and people want to check that. So I think that will evolve with it.
I agree with you. To a certain extent that we're going to be having again a clash of perspective, and there's companies that's going to be taking the leap forward with such technology and maybe needing to withdrawing it because their consumer will get smart about it. We see that all the time also. So
All the time.
the only thing that we're sure from a future perspective is that we are unsure about it. All right, that's always the same thing.
Always.
But I do believe that technology again is a tool like any other tools, and therefore if used for bettering the not only the human world but the value from a marketplace perspective of human beings, it's a fantastic thing. If it's to the detriment of the human value, then I am against it, and that's where my position relies. That being said, we talk about the industry at large, but obviously you have a book now, which everybody can obviously go purchase on Amazon and I think a few other sites, but Amazon's always a great place to be, certainly. And tell me more about where you see your journey sort of coming. You do podcasting, you do speaking, you have a book. Obviously, Black Sheep community is sort of thriving. It's getting bigger. Tell me more about where you see all of this sort of leading you, if you had to, if again you had to project.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I struggle with feeling like it's a bit naive to think that it would really change the world for better if more people knew about this other way of doing sales. Like, imagine the amount of people that would just like have a sigh of relief and their whole body relax, that they didn't have to do all of this aggressive douchebag stuff if they want to be in sales. And as a buyer, imagine the reason 80% of people have made a decision beforehand is because they dread the sales interaction. So people can't like get information they need about things that are important to them, about making big purchases, complex purchases, crucial purchases. So if people could be excited to go talk to someone knowing that they're going to let them know who's not a fit and when it doesn't work so that they can make the best decision for their personal interests, I really think that the world would kind of be better. So a big dream, I would love for 1 million people to read Black Sheep Sales and to tell other people about it and be like, guess what? You don't have to do any of that awkward stuff that you hate. Because a lot of people learn these sales methods that are, my theory is that for a long time, it was aggressive men selling to aggressive men. And so these strategies worked. However, there's such a wide variety of personalities, genders, ages, socioeconomic backgrounds in both the buying and selling positions that a different way is necessary for sales to continue being successful. There has to be innovation. And I truly believe that this could make a huge difference in a lot of people's lives if they just knew, like, hey, you don't have to do it like that. Have you checked out this thing, Black Sheep Sales? It feels so much more comfortable.
Be yourself. Everyone else is taken. Oscar Wilde. Aleasha Bahr, thank you so much for joining me on the Meaningful Podcast. It was so phenomenal to dive into all these different concepts, and thank you for how vibrant you are, how alive you are. I think that makes me smile a lot, and I'm sure will make a lot of our audience smile as well. And I would absolutely love if you can share some last words of wisdom with our audience, please.
So regarding sales, the one thing I like to leave everybody with is like, do not let feeling weird about sales stop you, because you are talented and you care, and people are going to spend money with somebody, and you don't want them to spend money with someone who's good at sales and terrible at fulfillment. Save people from bad service and get good at communicating what you do and how you do it so that you can save people from that experience, because the world needs you.
Thank you for spending your time with us today on the Meaningful Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review or share it with someone who could benefit from it. And always remember, your story matters. Make it meaningful. We hope to see you next time.